Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to class 3 of the Isopanisad. Haribol. We're on verses 3 and 4. We had some beautiful reflections. We reflected about the 6 opulences. We reflected about stewardship, the principle of stewardship, guarding the Lord's property, and taking what we need, setting aside, understanding that things have been set aside as our quota. Beautiful reflections. We'll get into verses 3 and 4. And we'll start with some kirtan. And do you have any announcements?
So just, okay. Just a few announcements. I am going to not physically be here, and neither is Shamya. It's on Thursday. I go to Switzerland, and he's going back to Toronto. So class, for anyone who does still want to come to the Bhakti House, Tracy volunteered to know, like, she will be here, and we'll have a computer here, so there will be that access to coming in person. Otherwise, class will be as usual on Zoom. And then I'm just going to mention morning program here as well, that Shami will be leading morning program still without me. So everything will resume. Everything will resume as usual. And I think that was all.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Let's chant a little kirtan, so come into a comfortable seat. Maybe shift around, move a little side to side, and roll out your neck, your shoulders. Open and close your mouth, release your jaw. Audio in.
Yeah.
Let's take a deep breath in together. Fill up. Open your mouth. Exhale. Let it go. Start with our opening prayers. This invocation, honoring of all of our teachers, the acharyas who have walked this path before us, bestowing the light of knowledge upon us, removing the darkness of ignorance. And imagine perhaps this is your first time chanting these opening prayers, and it's the first time chanting the Maha Mantra with full enthusiasm, with sincerity, with gratitude, right, for the true magic, the medicine that this practice has brought to all of our lives. Something to be ever fresh, and even in moments where we may temporarily take it for granted, may it be a reminder to have deep gratitude. Deep gratitude. Deep breath in. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshur-Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu-Greva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Call out like a mother crying for her child. This level of love, this level of desperation. Hare Krishna Shri Isopanisad Shastra Study Group Ki, Vermont Bhakti Health Sangha and beyond Ki. Hari Hari Bol.
Om Jnana-tirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So let's have a little more reflection from the verses 1 and 2. We also reflected on how, Ishavasya principle. Ishavasya principle, that everything is owned and controlled, everything animate and inanimate is coming from the Lord. It's his energy. And we should just take whatever is set aside as our quota. And hopefully you had a chance to think about how that applies in the world, how that may be misapplied. Many people don't actually understand or apply that principle, and it does so much damage. So you can reflect on that. Let's get a little bit of anything that stood out from the last class before we jump into verse 3.
I have something.
Yeah.
I have two things. Just reflection that I really appreciated the explanation of karma, because I feel like I've been searching for it for that explanation for a long time, and anytime that I've heard it in the past, like reflecting on that after you explain it, then I'm like, wow, I really didn't understand it still. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. And then just seeing, actions, how things can affect others. And then the other thing was I really enjoyed hearing about the animals, from spending time outside and then observing nature too. That really made a lot of sense. And then how they go and do what they just do without even thinking about it, and but they have less freedom. So then it helped me to reflect on when things are more simplified in our lives too, and we have a little bit more, not in a bad way, but just less things, a little bit less that we have to do, and then you just know what you have to do, and it just becomes second nature instead of having all these things that are going on, a little bit more complicated stuff, I guess. That's what so thank you.
Thank
that
you.
Really helped.
Yeah, the animals are characterized by operating under just instinct, which is the super soul guiding them naturally. So there's less leeway, and it's a simpler existence. It's nice to give yourself over to be guided by Krishna. The thing with the animal life is that they don't have the choice. We do. So if we choose to be guided by Krishna, it's actually meaningful, because we actually have the opportunity, the prerogative to exercise our free will, whether we want to or not. And so our choices actually matter a lot more. We actually have choice in a greater sense. And the next verse, today's verse that we're going to start with, verse 3, really hinges on that responsibility. Thank you. Yeah, I think what I was saying about the Ishavasya principle is that there's a lot we can reflect around responsibility and irresponsibility. That if we we talked a lot about the positive. If we do actually see the Lord's energies as coming from him, and we treat them that way, and then we just take whatever we need from that, understanding that we have a quota and we're taken care of, then everything works very nicely. We get what we need. And if we don't, then we have all the problems that we can see, you know? Can anyone name a problem that exists in society on a large scale or any kind of scale because of not applying this Ishavasya principle?
The environment,
The environment, what about it?
just that we're getting warmer and warmer and
Global warming?
overutilizing,
Sure.
plastic and
Yeah.
all that. Ugh,
Pollutants,
yeah,
air pollution, water pollution, land use, water use, topsoil runoff, stripping the soil of nutrients, you name it. So many things. Laundry list we can go on. It's just because we don't actually recognize that it belongs to Krishna. We don't treat it with care. It's like having a rental car and just trashing it, you know? It's not what a cultured person does. It's pretty not genteel. Kind of low class thing to do. Yeah. So animals don't do that. They don't actually do that because they can't. We can. We can actually act very saintly, or we can actually act very irresponsibly. So good. Another problem or group of problems caused by not understanding the Ishavasya principle, not applying it, not applying that everything belongs to Krishna. Just take what you need.
Like animal slaughter.
Animal slaughter, right? No need for it. It's certainly not the way we do it too. Just like mechanized, large scale, unconscious, you know. There's a reason why nobody ever catches Bugs Bunny in the cartoons, because the kids watch that and they'll freak out because it hurts the heart. You know, it's unnecessary. It's a higher form of life. Bugs Bunny can eat the carrot, but you can't catch Bugs Bunny the rabbit because the kids will freak out. It's a fact. There's research on this. In those cartoons, it never happens. Tweety Bird never gets caught. Bugs Bunny never gets caught. You know, Jerry the Mouse never gets caught by the tomcat. But we teach ourselves and our kids and our society that this is a normal, healthy, appropriate thing. It doesn't have to be. Again, because human life means we have choice. It can be or it cannot be up to us. And so there's a certain amount of compassion. There's a certain amount of greed that comes into the equation there, and there's consequences either way, for sure. And I will say, having done a master's thesis and studied the environmental effects of plant-based diets, they're also the diets that are better for the environment too. So you're talking about water use, land use, carbon dioxide emissions, all that. It's not a coincidence. If you eat for your spiritual diet, you're also eating for the planet. Not a coincidence at all. That's the arrangement. Beautiful. Any other reflections before we go into verse 3?
There's also the slaughtering of humans,
Mhm.
right? So like war, fighting
Yes.
over resources and wanting more land or more weapons or more oil or
Right.
more gold, whatever it may be. Not
Yeah.
taking the quota, but wanting more and more and more.
More. Yeah, there's a phenomenon that happens like that in the human body. It's called a cancer cell. The cancer cell multiplies. It keeps multiplying until its uncontrolled multiplication becomes a problem for the greater entity. And the greater entity has to kill it. In fact, cancer cells occur naturally in the body all the time, and they're killed almost all the time by the body because it's a naturally occurring thing. The body recognizes this isn't working, this one gets ejected. So the planet actually can respond, karma can respond, individual or societal. And in the 12th canto Bhagavatam, Bhumi, the personified earth, she reflects on how over the ages so many people have tried to conquer her. So many people have planted flags on this part of her and that part of her, and for their like firefly-like lives, just briefly, to think, oh, this is my empire, you know, whether it's Alexander or this person or that king. She names so many, and it's like I've seen them all come and go, and I remain. And only the person who recognizes that the ownership is actually not with us, the stewardship is with us. We're temporarily, you know, we inherited from our ancestors, and we pass it on to our descendants. They're just stewarding. And one who operates that way, they understand that there's something greater. That's the beginning of spiritual understanding. And then they operate in that way, and there's no need. There's no misunderstanding. Oh, who could conquer this thing? She's supporting all of us. Very nice.
Can I say one other thing?
Yeah.
I love how you gave a definition of devotional service. You said devotional service is deliberately reconnecting all of the opulences to Krishna.
Deliberately reconnecting all the opulences to Krishna, right?
And then like we were speaking about how surrender looks different for all of us. And if we surrender or if we dovetail, right, or spiritualize the opulence that we're most attached to,
Mhm.
right? That can be what our surrender
Yeah,
looks like.
systematically, bit by bit.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Allison, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was also going to just comment on the environmental aspect because that's where my mind went, but also just finding our quota, how we become this society where we could have anything at our fingertips and
Right.
everything has become so convenient. We're so inundated and assaulted on social media and, well, maybe not everybody, but influencers and just people telling you what you need, what to buy this, you'll feel this way. And that can become really overwhelming. So just finding a balance and ignoring all that. I was telling Kishori I had to go to a wedding at an all-inclusive hotel resort and talk about not filling your quota. I mean, you could just have unlimited anything you want. And the wastefulness and just the gluttony was just really hard for me to be there, actually.
Yeah.
So it's just, why do we have to have everything? It's just, it was a lot. So I really just appreciate all these teachings and trying to find a balance in my own life between wants and needs.
Thank you.
Thank
Just like
you.
just like a wise and loving parent will understand the mentality of their child, and they'll see if the child is taking for granted the privileges they have, they'll temporarily restrict some of them, because the whole point is they don't want to spoil their consciousness. They want them to grow up with gratitude and to be able to use and not misuse any facility, you know. So similarly, the human form of life is a special inflection point in the evolutionary cycle, because we actually have so much more capacity to grow in either direction. So for us, Krishna is very interested to see what we do with our responsibility, with our ability to interact with his energies. What do we do with our motivation? Animals can't really have motivation in the same way we have. They don't have the big span of different kinds of motivation. Very simple. Humans can have much more agency over that, much more direction. And with that being said, we'll go into verse 3. So this is a verse about misuse, irresponsibility. So I'll share the screen. Verse says, Surya namate loka antina tamasavritaha tangste pritya pikachanti yeke chatmahano janaha. The killer of the soul, heavy speech indeed, the killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. So this is a kind of poetic speech that's used in some places in the Upanishads. The killer of the soul is interesting because in the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, actually, early on, we understand Krishna says the soul can never be cut, can never be burned, it can never be moistened, dried by the wind. It's not a material element. It doesn't become born, and it never dies. This is very fundamental, what's called Atma Tattva, science of the soul. The soul never dies. That's how it's different. That's one of the ways it's different from the matter. And yet we see this verse says, the killer of the soul, whoever they may be, has consequences. So what does that mean? It's not talking about biological death. It's not talking about death as we understand it. Because there is no such thing for the soul. However, in the same chapter in Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about the eternality of the soul, the beginnings of devotional service are described, chapter 2. And in that chapter, there's a very famous verse, verse 40. Neha pikramana shosti prativayo navidyate svalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahatu bhayat. In this process, in this endeavor of connecting yourself with the divine, there's no loss and there's no diminution, and even a little bit of advancement. Svalpam, su-alpam means even a tiny bit of advancement can save you from the greatest fear. So Prabhupada elaborates on that. The greatest fear for a living entity in the human body, the greatest degradation is to lose the opportunity to act as a human, to go to a lower form of life. The soul isn't killed, can't be killed. It's eternal. But we can be put in time out. We can actually lose for some time the advantage of an advanced personality of choice that human has, and due to misuse Just like if you're in the corrective system, if it's a functional system, then it responds to your behavior. Good behavior, shorter sentence, better facility, more library time, more workout time in the yard. You get to be on the prison baseball team, whatever it may be. Bad behavior, consequences. So one way or another, you run out your term, but there's a kind of a rectification, correction that's supposed to happen. And for humans, it's actually, this verse is one of many verses in the scripture that's pointing out the real rarity and glory of the human life. How much we should take that for what it is, not take it for granted, take it very seriously, because otherwise we're said to be poetically killing the soul because we cast ourselves into darkness, we cover ourselves. Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. So he says here, the conclusion is that as human beings, we are meant not simply for solving economic problems on a tottering platform, meaning problems that even if you solve them, all the variables shift anyway, but for solving all the problems of the material life into which we have been placed by the laws of nature. So because of our greater facility, our greater opportunity, we also have greater responsibility. A human can actually enjoy more refined life than an animal can, and has the capacity to develop a relationship with Krishna. And because of that, if they don't, it matters. Just like if they do, it matters. So just want to stress again what we stressed in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita when talking about hellish or heavenly conditions. These are not eternal. When we're not talking about the spiritual world, we're not talking about eternal situations. There is no such thing as damnation. There is no such thing as casting a soul into a pit of fire, forever, etc., etc. This doesn't happen. So Atmaha, killer of the soul, means one actually enters into darkness, one enters into ignorance. That can even happen in the human form of life. So misuse of our responsibility can create problems even in this world. This is why this verse is following on the tail of Ishavasimidang Sarvam, the principle of engaging Krishna's opulences with him. And then the next verse said, if you do that, you can live for hundreds of years with no problem. You don't create karma. And this verse is saying, well, what happens if you don't do that? You do create karma. And aside from karma on other planets or in temporary hellish situations, we can experience hellish situations even here. So this is actually quite practical, quite reconcilable with our current sense perception. If we misuse our responsibility, we don't get to enjoy the natural world as much. If we misuse our responsibility, our lifespans are shortened. Breathing becomes more difficult. Mental health is, there's an epidemic of mental health problems. Suicide. Our diet becomes restricted. Overpopulation, criminal population, violence. So many things happen because of misuse of freedom, because of misapplication of our power, of our share of the quota, misusing what we have, and trying to get more for selfish reasons. Hell can be created even on this planet, and so can heaven if we actually apply it nicely. It's also possible to shift that around. We can see that in spiritual societies around the world and across time, when people are living together in this kind of consciousness of God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, which is once again, as always, available under any banner in any language, because it's the property of the soul, not of Sanskrit or this particular tradition. It's just an inherent relationship. If they function that way, it's a very sweet life. It's as good as it gets on this planet, or any other. And if it's not, then it's some mix of the modes of nature. So again, this is a call to action and a call to sobriety, to taking seriously our responsibility and taking advantage of the beautiful opportunity we have, because everyone who's reading this is a human, presumably. Demigods, if there are demigods in this room, I can't see them. So all obeisances to them. If there are animals, I'm surprised at them, and I'm glad for their opportunity, but generally animals cannot consider such things. It's the humans who are in this reflection, this inflection point where we can decide what to do with our beautiful free will gift. And so Shastra is for us. We get to decide. We're not burning off bad karma in one lower species or burning off good karma in a demigod species. We're here deciding if we want more karma or if we want to actually connect to the Supreme once and for all. So to that end, there are sometimes statements about consequences, just like a loving parent will offer consequences for actions, as well as rewards and guidance, support, all in the service of that upliftment and purification and correction and care and development of the child.
I mean, I have a
And
question.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry. I
please.
didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were
Oh, that's good.
at a natural pause. I can't think about the fact that, you know, this is if we misuse our responsibilities, we get less privileges, and that punishment would throw us back into a mode of ignorance, into a different body without thinking about what. So if I'm an ant or a lion or something, like, without thinking about what good behavior, like what's good behavior for an ant that would have him ascend to the next body. I know
Right.
it seems like a silly question, but I can't think about it, but I can't like get over it in my head for a second. Like,
It's a good question because I did say that. So if you combine that with an earlier statement that the animals don't have as much leeway, they don't actually have good or bad behavior generally. So they just live and die. And so they play out eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Material desires are desired, material desires are fulfilled. They get that and then they go on to the next life automatically. A progress is made karmically automatically. Because they don't have laws, they don't have responsibility, they don't have expectations. So they simply run out the clock. While they're playing out material desires, they're all getting the material things they want, you know. In fact, if you think about it, no one can really eat more than a pig. No one can mate more than a rabbit, you know, or like sleep longer than a bear. It's like they actually do it better than we do, you know. How about being a wolf? You could just like hunt anything and eat it. It's like, that's appealing to some kind of consciousness. They get to have that. And you get work that out, get that out of your system. And there's no question of good behavior, bad behavior, because they're tightly regulated. So they have that body, they move on to the next body. And that's it. But from the perspective of the soul, from the perspective of Krishna, this is a term of imprisonment that's not necessary to have for the soul. This is not what we're meant for. And so certainly for the human being who can do something about it. For us, there is good behavior and bad behavior. That's why the scripture is for us. It's not for the lions. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess it's just, I don't know, it's just a thought that I had about it. And like, so
Yeah.
presumably there's some kind of hierarchy of an amoeba to a, you know, to an ant, to a spider, and keeps on going up.
It is given
to a
in
human.
different scriptures, yeah.
Okay.
And even among humans, I mentioned this in one of our classes in Bhagavad Gita, there are considered to be 200,000 different kinds of humans. Not because there's 200,000 different biological species, because they're all the same biological species. There's 200,000 different gradations of consciousness, different motivations, different levels of attachment to the spiritual and material. So Shastra talks about that. I'm not aware of what those different gradations are. I couldn't tell you, but they have to do with what kind of mind, what kind of attachment we have. So there's that much refinement in the human life. Even though every single one of those 200,000 can mate with any one of the other ones and create other babies that are all human. This is not, you know, like Neanderthals and stuff. This is all human beings. But so special is the human form of life that if you look at it from a higher point of view, 200,000 completely unique different ways of living. Right. So pick your poison, pick your nectar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the Prabhupada ends on an optimistic note that as Bhagavad Gita points out in the 6th chapter, as Arjuna, and I mentioned this earlier, as Arjuna said, you know, if I don't make it, if I'm not successful in this bhakti path and devotional service, then what happens? Because I've given up my material, I'm going to give up my material duties to do this. Then it seems like I'm a failure in material life and I'm a failure in spiritual life. This is coming up in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. We're having discussions on that chapter in our morning program, Fridays. And Krishna answers in that section of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, that any advancement is permanent advancement. You always get the advancement. It's like a receptacle, a container that always just contains drop after drop after water, and it builds up. and that never goes away. So any spiritual advancement you make is always yours. Whereas any material advancement you make, if you don't complete it perfectly in one life, it's never really yours to take with anyway. It's never done. And so spiritually, you can develop a desire for bhakti by practicing a little bit. You pick up where you left off. You make 1% advancement, you start at 1. Make 4% advancement, start at 4. You don't go back to 0. So this is eternal credit. And that's very encouraging because it is part of our relationship with the divine. It is part of who we are that doesn't change. And this is why even Krishna says in that section, why some people are naturally attracted. They're naturally attracted to bhakti. They're naturally attracted to the principles of connection with the divine. Whether or not they're into the rituals and regulations and specificities, they're into the fundamental of connecting because they've done it before. In some way, shape, or form, they've done it consciously or unconsciously. So they pick up where they left off. And they make advancement and move forward, move upward. Okay? So now we'll go to verse 4. And I'll share the screen on this one as well. Anejadekam manaso javiyo nainadeva apnuvan purvamarshat tadhavato jnanate tishtat tasminnapo madrishva didhati. Although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him. Although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain, he surpasses all in excellence. So now we're hearing about the nature of the Supreme. We've heard about how everything is coming from him and the benefits of living according to that and the consequences of not doing so. And now, for the next few verses, we're going to hear a bit about some of the glories of the Lord and some of his contradictions, actually. So this verse says that although he's fixed in his abode, he moves faster than the mind, moves faster than anything. If you think about like travel, talk about like traveling, supersonic speed, traveling at the speed of light. Well, faster than that is the mind. If you just think about, the last place you've been, you're there. On the mental platform, you are there. It takes no time. The mind is extremely powerful, extremely fast traveling device. And Krishna is faster than that. The Lord is faster than that. He is more powerful than the demigods. He overcomes everyone with his excellence, the verse says. In other words, part of the point of this verse is that he excels everyone. He cannot be approached by our own power independently. Prabhupada focuses on this in the purport in many ways. So he talks about how the Lord is the source of the internal, external, and marginal potency. He is himself the source of the spiritual world, the spiritual energy. It's the internal potency. And then all of us, all conscious living entities, in whatever form they may be living in, all of us, marginal potency, and the external energy, the bodies themselves, matter of all kinds, gross and subtle. And he's the source of all those things. So if we're trying to figure out the divine, we're using one of his lower energies to try to approach the source of all energy. And that's futile. It's futile in the sense that we can't actually independently come to him, right? So this is one of the verses that's pointing out our complete dependence. Prabhupada says, the Sri Isopanisad here warns us of the futility of trying to establish the identity of the Lord through mental speculation, right? So given that this is true, given that the verse is saying he overcomes everyone, all others, he overcomes all forms of energy. He's fixed and yet he's moving. He stays in one place, but he controls everyone who supply even all the elements. Even the powerful demigods can't approach him. So it's impossible then, by consequence, for us to figure him out, this mental speculation process. Prabhupada also says, thus from the very beginning, Isopanisad warns us to be very careful To play the part designated for us by the Lord, this does not mean that the individual soul has no initiative. Because he is part and parcel of the Lord, he must partake of the initiative of the soul as well. When a person properly utilizes his initiative, his active nature, his intelligence, understanding that everything is the Lord's potency, he can revive his original consciousness. All power is obtained from the Lord. Therefore, each particular power must be utilized to execute the will of the Lord and not otherwise. The Lord can be known by one who has adopted such a submissive service attitude, right? The Lord can be known by one who has adopted a submissive service attitude. That's another definition of bhakti, submissive service attitude. Particularly, like, I would say, deliberately applying, consciously applying a submissive service attitude. And so that's in contrast with challenging spirit, what Prabhupada calls a challenging spirit. So in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter 4, verse 34, Krishna says to Arjuna, you should learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sivaya. He says, do these three things. Pranipat, submit yourself, ask thoroughly all questions, and render service. And then such a person can help offer you all guidance and support to understand the absolute truth. And the purport is a very useful purport. I recommend reading it again, 434, Bhagavad Gita. He says there, Prabhupada does, that what this means. It doesn't mean don't ask questions, because even the verse itself says pariprashna, ask all kinds of questions. Pari means all the way around, like perimeter. Circle everything with your questions. Make sure you're thorough. But the questions have to be respectful. Like, there's a difference between a question where it's like, I want to understand the truth, and a question to show your own strength. A question to, like, take somebody down, or to win an argument, or to challenge another person to show off. That doesn't help. But asking questions because you want truth, you recognize, I don't get it. Like, I don't know who the divine is. You know, that's actually a legitimate question. It's a very powerful question. The first verse of the Vedanta Sutra says, Atatu Brahma Jignasa. Now, therefore, that you're in a human body, now is the time to inquire. So inquiry is fantastic. But Prabhupada says there, absurd inquiries are condemned. This is how he puts it. Absurd inquiries are condemned. Absurd means asking, but you're not really asking. You've got some other ulterior motive. So this verse is talking about today, that we're talking in Isopanisad. It's talking about independently trying to figure out the Lord, absurd inquiries, challenging spirit, you know, taking ourselves as the center and trying to accumulate knowledge independently. You know, I can just grab it and make it mine. Just like I can make the earth mine, I can make all that is knowable my knowledge by being sharp enough. That is doomed, it is futile, completely doomed to failure. However, the humble, submissive, dedicated attitude of a devotee, that attracts all knowledge. That in relationship to the guru, in relationship to scripture, in relationship even to the heart, that, oh, I don't know what truth is, but if you're out there, universe, God, goddess, higher power, please help me. I need answers. I need to know you. That is a universal experience. Has worked for so many people since forever. So this is a call to humility. It's a call to humility and a reminder of our need to cry out humbly in the right way, and not in a challenging or absurd or egotistical or kind of aggrandizing, self-motivated way. Does that make sense? Tanya says in chat here. Can you expand? Aaron says, can you expand on the word submissive? Yeah. Okay. That's a great word. Let's look it up here. Submissive. That's from Latin.
Often a negative connotation.
Yeah. It could be very, in the material world where everyone wants to be in charge, it could be considered a negative. But the word submissive means, from Latin, inclined to submit, yielding to power or authority. Sub means underneath. Mittere means to send or to place yourself underneath. It's deliberately placing yourself underneath, to yield. Inclined or ready to submit or yield to the authority of another unresistingly or humbly obedient. Unresisting. So unresisting is one definition. It's like I am deliberately not trying to resist. I'm trying to avoid, I'm trying to, curb my own tendency to resist. I'm choosing this of my own free will. All those definitions we read on submission are active things that involve our agency. They're not, it's not submission if someone controls you or enslaves you. That's not submission, according to the definition, because the Latin is to place yourself underneath. The agency is on the person who is submitting. They choose to submit. So we have to choose Krishna, not just like be crushed by, some belief system or consequence, or like we actually have to at some point decide. Just like Arjuna decided, I cannot figure this out, Krishna. I'm coming to you. Please help me. He submitted. He chose Krishna. And then everything changed. Does that help? Yeah. And Tanya says, you said there were 3 ways to know the Lord. Right. That's from the Bhagavad Gita 434. Submit yourself, ask questions, and render service. Render service. It's in the Sanskrit for 434. Sadvidi pranipatena means to submit yourself. Pariprashna means to ask questions thoroughly, even. And sevaya, by service. By service. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Yeah, how are we doing? How's that verse sitting for everybody? Verse 4. I think we're going to go to verse 5 actually today, because it follows really well from 4. And 6 and 7 are a natural pair we'll get to next week. So I will go to 5, but before we do, how is 3 and 4 so far? Any questions, comments, or reflections?
I listened to Vaisheshika Das Prabhu speak on Monday on Wisdom of the Sages. That was just yesterday, Monday. And he said something really, really amazing about how quest is found in the beginning of the word question. And that really, really, really struck me, because we can choose how we move forward by the questions we ask. And if we use deep inquiry and we really are thoughtful about the questions that we put out there, then it automatically puts us on a path headed into that direction of which we're inquiring. And I thought that was just really, really amazing and so applicable to all of this.
Yeah. Question begins with quest. Yeah, define your purpose, define your direction. Yeah, actually, the person who asks the question in a conversation leads the conversation. They have the power. And if you're asking questions in your life, you're applying your agency. Animals can't ask questions. Humans who choose not to ask questions are living in a very unfortunate way. Was it Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Put it up.
It's
blocking his face.
No, it's fine like this now. Yeah.
Not on the screen.
Oh, is it?
You look very, very dark.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
So we want the light.
Yeah.
I
Better for you.
can handle the sun.
Better for your eyes, but worse for just put it all the way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Sorry.
No problem. I appreciate the thought. So yeah, question and quest. Yeah, purpose, direction. Thank you.
I was thinking also about Vaisheshika Das from the same interview yesterday about how the third way to submit or to know the Lord is through rendering service. So his first Vaisheshika Das Prabhu has 4 questions that you ask. One is, what is my purpose? The second is, what is my service? And he was saying how
can I be of service
how can it be of
in this
service?
moment, right?
Right, and there's so many awkward situations in the material world and social situations and all these things, and that not only have we asked this of ourselves, how can I be of service? What is my dharma, which is connected to the first and second question, but also if you're new to a situation or you're new to a community or you're unsure or you feel a little awkward or you feel insecure, go to the person that looks like they know what they're doing and say, how can I be of service? What service can I render?
Yeah.
Right. And I was just thinking about how that's also a way that we can know the Lord, we can feel the presence of Krishna, to also empower us in those moments where we feel uncomfortable or less confident or awkward or, these types of things. So.
Yeah. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Parikshit is cursed to die, he decides to just approach a spiritual teacher and ask a series of questions. And his first is, what is my duty at the time of death? what do I do about this? It wasn't the questions like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
You know, how dare they? It wasn't on that level. It was like, okay, what is needed from me? What am I supposed to do here? What am I missing? I have such little time. What is the priority right now? Right? It was service oriented. Similarly, Arjuna, he was like, I don't know what to do. Please help me understand so I can fulfill what's actually my duty, because I can't understand what my duty is anymore. I thought it was one thing, and that seems unthinkable. The opposite seems unthinkable. What am I missing? It turns out he was missing connecting it to Krishna. So this question of like, what's my service in this moment? Yeah, awkward situations, uncomfortable situations, like that powerful question of, well, wow, wait a minute. Yeah, so how am I putting myself in the center, and how can I take myself out and put you in the center? And what do you actually want from me here, Krishna? What is actually my service? What's my role in this scene? You know, I missed the script. I missed rehearsal. I'm sorry, but I'm here for it. What would you like me to do? What's my service? Very powerful. And that's the submissive attitude that Prabhupada encourages us to have, that by which the Lord is revealed.
That's a call to humility.
It's a call to humility. Yeah. Because service means I'm not in the center. But it's not even that I'm not in the center. I'm not in the center. I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to act that I'm not in the center. It's not just devotion. It's devotional service. I'm going to put that into practice. I'm going to show you that I'm not in the center by doing something about it. And what would you like me to do about that, Krishna? You know, that's a great question to ask. What is my service? Thank you.
In the corporate world, there's, you know, some really, really good leadership coaches that, you know, talk about how important it is to, you know, have a service leadership method, right? You know, servant leadership. I haven't really experienced a lot of managers that actually do that well, but it's
Servant
nice that there are, yeah, that you know, it's nice that there are really good coaches out there that are trying to educate, you know, the leaders of companies and the managers out there that that is a more effective way to lead. And I thought it was, you know, applicable for those of us that have, you know, corporate America jobs or business jobs, that is a, you know, growing concept out there. I'd like to see more managers actually embody it, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's the system that works in the corporate world, because it's the system that works in the human world, because it's the system that Krishna gave us. It's our dharma to serve, and somebody who acts in that way becomes empowered. Parent is a servant, a teacher is a servant, a spiritual leader is a servant, political leader is a servant, societal leader is a servant. You know, a public leader is a servant. That's what they are, and one who functions in that way gets empowered in their role, because they're taking up responsibility for others. That's like a little bit of what we're meant for, right? So they're actually like deliberately trying to be of service, and so there's a little bit of reward for that. Things work better. They're happier. Those who follow them are happier. People want that. They want to be with somebody who inspires them, who shows them they actually are looking out for me. They care about me. You know, we were just in New York City, and we were around some extremely exalted devotees, you know, our gurus and others, and it's striking the mood of care that they have for their followers, their dependents, their disciples, people much junior than them. This is very much touching to the heart. We want that, and we're made for that. And so this servant leader, yeah, this is devotional, actually. Ultimately, is that the service is there, the leadership is there, and they're both in terms of Krishna. That, you know, I'm serving this living entity as Krishna would want me to do for his pleasure. I'm leading in that way, in the service and the stewardship that he's given, under his guidance as scripture and guru and super soul guide me to do. Thank you. Let's go to verse 5. Then we'll have time for any more reflections. Verse 5 is more of the inconceivable contradictions, power of the Lord. This The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he is outside of everything. Contradiction. Contradiction. So he is one category, he is the opposite category. He's both. He's neither. So Prabhupada talks, first of all, in the purport about the nature of personhood. You know, some interpretations of the Upanishads will be strictly impersonal, and that's not actually intellectually honest, because it's not that Krishna is just impersonal. He has his impersonal feature, and he also has his personal feature. And just like I could have an impersonal feature, and I have a personal feature, but the personal feature is the source of the impersonal, right? If I walk in a room and I move things around and I leave the room, you feel my presence. You notice my effect, my influence, but I'm not there, right? If you walk into a room and there's been an argument, you can feel the air is charged. Even if the people are not there, there is an effect. If I leave voicemail on your phone, it's my energy. Am I there? Kind of, not really. I'm actually somewhere else, but I've left an extension of myself. I can do that. With all my limitations, I have my energy, my impersonal feature. I can give you the cold shoulder too, right? Anybody can. Only a person can give you the cold shoulder. That's why it's called the cold shoulder, because it's usually warm. And so Prabhupada is making the point here that Krishna can be impersonal. He has this impersonal feature by which his personality is not evident. Because he is a person, he can have that feature. And so there's the person. The person can walk and he cannot walk. He can be very near and very far away. So an honest understanding of these kinds of contradictory, heady verses is not that, oh, there is no personhood, it's all just one. It's like, it is all just one. There is the impersonal feature, and there's also the supreme person behind it as well. And so Prabhupada says we should not take it for granted that because we cannot see God with our eyes, the Lord has no personal existence. Isopanisad refutes this by declaring that the Lord is far away, but very near also. And he gives some evidence about the Lord's abode given in scripture, etc. And Prabhupada also talks about how this verse is talking about how the Lord is very near and very far. And therefore, one of the takeaways for us is that he's all pervading. And so even though he's a person, what it means for us is that unlike other persons in our experience, he's available everywhere, right? His energy is available for us always, and that energy is not different from him. He's everywhere in his creation. He can choose, therefore, to manifest himself wherever he wants, right? Therefore, for example, he can be and is present in deity form because he chooses to be, because that's an extension of his mercy. The Archavigraha, the deity form, is called a mercy incarnation. Just like the guru is a mercy incarnation because the Lord doesn't have to. No one made him do it. He chooses to be available that way. Through the teachers, the gurus, he chooses to be available in the Archavigraha, which scientists cannot, can look at and analyze as matter. This is wood, marble, stone, this is sand, whatever the case may be. And yet that same material substance can take on spiritual quality by the will of the Lord, that the Lord manifests in the form. The Lord can manifest in spiritual sound vibration. A sound vibration you can record and analyze, apparently it's just material sound, and yet it has spiritual quality because it's his energy. I can't do that because it's not my energy. I didn't create sound. I didn't create matter. It's not an extension of me. I cannot manifest my personhood through it. Krishna can because it is his energy. So similarly, no matter where we are in our lives, no matter what our situation, Krishna is with us. By definition, he's with us. Always and unceasingly, without interruption. And we can access him, which is incredibly encouraging. And so Prabhupada talks about that. He says, in Bhagavad Gita 4:11, the Lord says that how he treats his devotee depends on the devotee's degree of surrender. The Lord reserves the right not to reveal himself to anyone and everyone, but to show himself only to those souls who surrender unto him, right? We might talk to this word submission, deliberately submit, like choose to apply themselves without resistance. Thus, for the surrendered soul, Krishna, he is always within reach, whereas for the unsurrendered soul, he is far, far away and cannot be approached. Right? So I want you to focus this week at your reflections on this principle. how for the surrendered soul, Krishna is always within reach, and for the unsurrendered soul, he is always out of reach, very far away, impossible to understand, moves faster than the mind, etc., etc. Cannot be approached through absurd inquiry. And I'd like you to reflect on anything you heard from this class in verses 3, 4, or 5, and specifically, if you can, about what this means to you, how Krishna is always within reach of the surrendered soul and always inaccessible to the unsurrendered. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Great. And so with that, I'll just read the last purport by Srila Prabhupada in this verse. Last two, actually, these are good purports. In Brahma Samhita, it is said that Govinda, the primeval Lord, enters everything. He enters the universe as well as the atoms of the universe. He is outside in his Virat form, that's the universal form. And he's within everything as Antaryami. As Antaryami, or super soul, he witnesses everything that is going on, and he awards us the results of our actions as karma pala, which means the fruit of karma. We ourselves may forget what we have done in previous lives, but because the Lord witnesses our actions, the results of our actions are always there, and we have to undergo the reactions nonetheless, right? Just like in a justice system, there has to be a way of accounting for somebody's activities. Krishna is the eternal witness. That's one way in which he's always with us. The fact is that there is nothing but God, within and without. Everything is a manifestation of his different energies, just like the heat and light emanating from a fire, and in this way, there is a oneness among his diverse energies. Although there is oneness, however, the Lord in his personal form still enjoys unlimitedly all the pleasures enjoyed minutely by the tiny part and parcel living entities. He still has his personal existence. And that's what we're aiming to. Om Tat Sat, Hare Krishna. Now we'll take any comments, questions, reflections, anything that stood out. Didn't make sense, did make sense, was interesting. Any statements by Prabhupada, lots of little aphorisms and statements in these purports.
I appreciate the level of nuance, impersonal and personal, because I know like a lot of religions, there's not any nuance.
Right.
You can distinguish. So
yeah,
it's really good.
It's really good, and it's really practical too, because it may seem like it's just kind of brain candy, but it's actually quite important, because if there is no person, then I'm not a person, then there's no relationship. It's just like merging. And so the nature of our practice changes entirely based on the goal. If the goal is like annihilation of any personhood and self, then I don't actually have to submit. Who am I submitting to? I am God. We're all one, right? And so the nature of submission, of devotion, changes entirely, you know? And so these philosophical subtleties, nuances, actually have a great deal of importance. And to be able to explain it, for the scripture to be able to explain it, is so refreshing, satisfying to the intelligence, and so so useful for us as guides, that we can see how the Lord is personal, and also he has an impersonal feature, which explains, you know, the material energy being the way it is. And that's going to come up again in this Isopanisad, that Krishna is very near, but he's very far. And the speaker of Isopanisad is actually going to call out for the Lord to remove that covering and reveal his dazzling face, to remove the effulgence that's covering his real face, and to let him be seen by the devotee. Because that's the real desire of the devotee, to connect. I want to know you. As George Harrison saying, I really want to know you. I want to be with you. This is what the heart wants. So yeah, those nuances are very satisfying. Thank you. Any other reflections or comments, questions?
I was just thinking about the definition or description of submissive is actually something I was thinking about earlier today, in more of like a negative connotation or oppressive connotation. But your definition more so reminded me of how we associate submission with, I'll need you to repeat it, but like, was it pranam, or how things are passed down in the Bhakti lineage? What's the Sanskrit for that?
Oh, that verse in the Bhagavad Gita that I quoted?
Or it's how like or how like we're passing
Parampara?
down one to another.
Yeah, parampara.
Yeah, so
Literally
and-
means one after the other.
so that yeah, so the way you described or defined submission made me think more of that after hearing it, because when we can choose to put ourselves underneath that, then that's how actually we're able to like receive, and it feels less of like this turning over, but more so like just like repositioning ourselves to take and receive. And yes, I just was really appreciating that definition, because it definitely feels more empowering than anything else.
Thank you. Yeah, being in the position of a student is a great place to be. It's a very safe place to be. It's a very vibrant place to be. We want to be eternally students. You know, if you go to a class and you think you know everything, how much can you receive, right? But if you go anywhere in life and you're always ready to receive, and you're always considering that there's lessons, like just like life is never boring. It's always vibrant, always dynamic, and that's the submissive attitude of a student. And so that is good materially, and it's also very much necessary spiritually. Thank you for that reflection. Yeah.
It's also like why we call each other Prabhu.
Right. The Vaishnav culture, devotional culture, means to refer to each other. Prabhu means master. You know, what can I do for you? Like, I am acknowledging that you're great, and your greatness, I'm like deliberately acknowledging it. I read something about that recently. I think it was about the it's going to come to me, the definition of envy. Yeah, there's a couple things about that. One is that Jiva Goswami says the definition of envy is the inability to tolerate the greatness of another, which is like the opposite of submission. It's like, oh, damn, so good, you know. And like appreciation is like, wow, they are so good, you know. Like, look how good they are, and just appreciating that, being in that in a positive way. But there's something else I read, and it's not occurring to me. It'll come probably later, and if I remember it, I'll put it in the chat. Thank you. More questions, reflections, comments.
I was thinking a lot today, actually, at work, about how I'm like, people are asking, how are you doing since being back from Rath Yatra? And I'm like holding on for dear life because I'm thrown back into the busiest time of my school year. But what I've been thinking about is that this verse of the Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is near as well. It's also such a reflection of how we're skewed and how we're pulled in the material world. So like from my interpretation of it, like thinking about it as if we drift away and kind of get pulled into the Maya, into the busyness, into the challenges, into all the things. And in my experiences, I feel like Krishna's farther away from me. But when I'm able to stay centered and I'm able to stay in my practice and I'm able to call out in humility, he comes closer. And so I feel like this is like also the natural flow of like being in a human life right now. Like it just feels so much like that. This verse seems to speak to kind of that idea of like really trying to actively stay in it.
Yeah, Prabhupada would often say, if you take one step to Krishna, he takes 100 steps to you. His steps are a lot bigger than ours. But our turning to him there's a real responsiveness on his part. That's the prerogative and the privilege of our human life. And so I'm hearing you reflect that you experience that in your life. There is this responsiveness from him. There is this Prabhupada quotes from, where does he put it? Is it purport 4 or 5? I'll find it for you. Purport 5. In Bhagavad Gita 4:11, the Lord says that how he treats his devotee depends on the devotee's degree of surrender. That verse 4:11 Bhagavad Gita is Yegatam mam prapadyanti tangs tataya pajamyaham. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone is following my path in all respects, O Arjuna. That he's always looking out, like, okay, given their situation, how much are they trying? What are they giving to me? Like, how much do they want me? and he's responding to that. And that is eternally going on. So no matter how pressing or tough or bewildering our situation is, there is always the opportunity to turn to him. And there's like that you're experiencing, there's that right away. There's that feedback from him. That's putting these verses into practice in your life. So thank you for that reflection. This is application. It's the life of a devotee. Yeah, when we do that for our whole lives, then we're really convinced. So we're constantly running the experiment, and it keeps coming back. Like, yep, again, yep, little miracle there. Oh, it actually worked again. Yeah, no, it's still Krishna. He's still there. I'm not alone. It's like it's always a thing, and we're just trying to like confirm, and then we're convinced more and more, and the relationship deepens. Thank you. Anything else before we head out for the night? Leave from our in-person crew. Great. Okay, we read for verses 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Please reflect on the class, and also, like I said, how the Lord is inaccessible to those who don't approach with devotion, but always inaccessible, but always accessible to those who approach with devotion, and what that means for you, or how you see it playing out in the world. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Isopanisad ki jai. Brahman Bhakti Sangha and beyond ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Premanande, Haribo. We will continue with Isopanisad, even though we'll be in different parts of the world. We'll be connecting because Krishna is available everywhere. We just heard about that. Now we're going to put it into practice. So we'll see you in his WhatsApp energy and Zoom call energy. And he's also, for those who are in, yeah, you can also come here and be with Mahaprabhu in here. So yeah, home base. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bye, sweet souls. Have a beautiful night.